Welcome to Future Exchange Forum, a unique place where the paths of the esteemed and the ambitious intersect. Our vision is to create a dedicated platform that transcends boundaries and fosters collaboration. By bringing together luminaries from diverse fields, we aim to catalyze the exchange of knowledge, experiences, and ideas. And today, we have with us Mr. Tejas Pahlajani, the founder of Equist Consulting, who brings a wealth of experience from his 16 plus years in corporate and development sector, including esteemed roles at Tech Mahindra, Cognizant, and Genpact. With a distinguished consulting career that includes collaborations with giants like General Electric, GlaxoSmithKline, Microsoft, and more, Tejas has navigated the globe to pioneer productivity solutions. His commitment to enhancing organizational productivity led him to establish Equist, where his groundbreaking strategies have empowered over 700 individuals from diverse organizations to achieve an additional hour of focused work daily. At today's Future Exchange Forum, Tejas will share insights from his extensive research and first hand experiences on optimizing organizational productivity. By the way, the most interesting part is beyond his professional accolades, Tejas is a dedicated family man, an accomplished sailor, and a passionate guitarist. He himself is illustrating the balanced life that he advocates for all in their work. Tejas, thank you so much for accepting our invitation and being the part of this webinar. We are really looking forward to listening. How did you do this?
Well, thank you so much, Preeti, and thank you for the very warm introduction. You may it. I hopefully I can live up to that introduction as we go along in the next hour. So thanks so much, and firstly, thank you to to all of you, to you, to Ritika, Ankit, for inviting me to this. I'm really curious and looking forward to this conversation as well. Okay, so just a little bit about me, like Preeti mentioned, she's covered quite a lot. But I want to talk about the motivation. I worked over 16 years in different roles. And the reason I started Equist was because I call myself the most unproductive person I used to know. So whether it's, lack of focus, not being able to prioritize, not having work-life balance. I have much more work-life balance now than earlier. I used to work till 2 o'clock in the morning, and I was that kind of person. So I was the archetype of how not to be productive. So I've actually had to learn the hard way as I've gone along in the last many years. How do I really solve each and every problem? The only thing that worked in my favor was that I was very interested in the topic, so I kept reading and learning, and most importantly implementing the things I learned. And that's kind of helped me. uh, I'm a productivity learner. I don't call myself a productivity expert, so I'm also in the journey as much as you all are. But the only difference is I've just obsessed about the topic for many years, and I've read a lot about it. So yeah, so I think that's a little bit about me. In terms of the work that Equist does, I run an organization called Equist. It's a play on words. It's equilibrium specialist, so it's a combination of those two words. So it's really about how do I help people achieve a greater state of equilibrium. So it's an equilibrium specialist. Because productivity is important, but it's a means to an end. So for me, when I talk about productivity, it's not to make people more productive just for being productive, but how do you make people more productive so that they have a better sense of balance, a better sense of calm? We are all feeling stressed out, burnt out. We're feeling like we're not, that's that feeling in our mind that we're not settled, in our mind. So how do you feel more of that on a constant basis is really the objective of whatever I do, whatever I cover in a very practical way. So that's really what Equus does. So yeah, so I think with that, I'm going to go into the agenda. I'm just going to start sharing slides from this point on. So if you want to keep your camera on, you can. If you want to, keep it up, totally up to you. Okay. So the agenda for today. So I'm going to cover setting the context of, so the title of was why should you care about productivity, and what can you do about it. So I'm going to first talk about the context about why are we even talking about productivity, right? What does it really mean? So we're going to cover those areas. We're going to talk about what are the key productivity areas that we should be thinking of addressing as organizations. We're all working within different organizations at different positions. Obviously, most of you are in senior roles. You may be, running your own organization or being part of an organization. Either way, it's worth keeping in mind. What are steps, you should take, towards productivity? I'm going to share a few very high level high impact solutions, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. I just want to, put a caveat. We're covering 1 hour, so we're going to be a little bit high level. Obviously, this is a topic which I normally spend about 18 hours in training sessions with people. So, it's hard to cover, to the depth, but I will try to make this as rich and as insightful as I can. So, yeah. So with that in mind, I'm going to just start with a question to all of you. Can you describe one productivity challenge that you're facing at work? I'm going to share a Menti link. You can put it up there. And if you would like to go, be on unmute and speak, please do, because we're trying to keep this as informal as possible. So I'm just going to share the material section. Yeah,
There
I've
are
shared the
too
sorry, Ritika.
so there are too many voices when we are working. There are too many things that come up. So that also affects our productivity or which prioritization, which to do on priority, which
Yeah, there are
I
too many
feel.
things, absolutely, too many things happening, absolutely. Yeah. Anyone else? And you can
Uh,
even put it down, please, Sanjay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So my experience is that this is not consistent, and we don't know that what is the optimum productivity actually. Sometimes it is looks like the very less productivity. Sometimes it looks like the very high productivity. So the consistency, and then we don't know that what would be the should be the right way to assess that. Okay, this is enough now.
Yeah, so that's interesting, right? Like, what does it even mean to be productive, right? Is in a sense what you're putting out there, which is a sort of a macro, high level and but at the same time very critical question. Absolutely. No, thanks, Sanjay.
Yeah, actually, we are from service field. We
Yeah, yeah.
just wanted to understand what is the scientific way of calculating a productivity.
It's unfortunately scientific is a. In fact, we're going to define productivity right after this. So these are all very relevant questions. But scientific is hard
Yeah,
because it to me it's the best way I can think of productivity is there's a goal. Are you moving towards that goal? Are you doing activities that are relevant to that goal? And if you are being productive. If you're not, then you may or may not be productive because it's possible you could be productive even if you're not. But as long as you know your direction, you're heading in that direction, that to me is a little bit about productivity. That's how I look at it. That's because it differs so much by services, by manufacturing, by development sector, by everything. It's hard to come to one definition. But I'll give you one definition right after this, in fact,
yeah.
on the next slide. Uh, I think Preeti, you had your hand. Oh, sorry.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes. I wanted to say, like, especially like someone like I come from a content industry where
yeah,
most of the job is thinking and just writing and thinking and writing,
yeah,
and
yeah,
kind
yeah,
of and sometimes I feel most 90% of it is just thinking. With
yeah,
the
yeah.
outcome of that would be just like few sentences of writing, but it's it's not something which is tangible. If you
Hmm.
so how do I gauge my productivity? There are days when I'm only working for 1 hour because my brain is not functioning. There are days when I'm working for 10 hours doing multiple pitches. So in the that kind of a space, how I mean like we can
Yeah,
talk
yeah.
about
And it
productivity.
complicates even further, Preeti. There may be a day when you've done 1 hour, you've produced more output than on a day you work 5 hours
Yes,
also, right? So, no,
absolutely.
absolutely. You're absolutely right. I think it gets even harder in creative, kind of work because those ideas don't come to you like this. But,
Yeah.
this creative work is actually not just related, relevant to creative work, if you look at it. Even if you're doing a manufacturing job, it requires creative thinking, or you're doing a services job, it requires creative thinking. So how do you that is a challenge. And again, we're gonna cover this in the definition. Kasha, sorry, I think Kasha
Yeah.
started.
Being consistently inconsistent. So thoughts on
Consistently inconsistent. Yeah, yeah. So that's one of your challenges. Absolutely. Such a
cohorts.
valid.
Yeah, and with people again motivating them. And I have a question as well, like what is the reason for motivation?
why people can't be self-driven. If when they can be autonomous cars, why not autonomous work?
It's a very, very existential question. I think the way I look at motivation is it can be built, firstly. A lot of people, look at motivation as something is I am feeling motivated or I'm not feeling motivated, and that's it. You can make yourself more motivated. Like I talk to people who, for example, who have been doing the same role for years, and I ask them, how are you still motivated? And they say the common thing I've seen as threads, in particular people who have been successful, is that they don't wait for motivation to strike. They insert motivation in where they go, and that's unfortunately it's a rare skill,
True.
which is why people struggle in a sense. If that answers your question.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, all we've gone deep in the first few minutes, which is great. No, please, any other thoughts, folks? This is cool. I think so. I'm just going to read out, two. I think the other thing which came up was focusing on which part of my business when multiple options exist, which is prioritization. Then somebody said too many things, too many priorities. Again, prioritization. I think motivation was the point that just came up, and how can we be productive? How we can be productive with minimalism. Um, uh, Actually, I would say it's not an either or. You can actually you're usually more productive if you're minimalistic, because that means you're more focused and working on a few things that matter. But if somebody who said that wants to speak and do that, if they don't, totally fine. But just like a very quick reaction to that. Cool. Okay. So the next question, next thing we're going to go to is, so we've got some great points, and we're going to come back to the challenges in productivity. The next thing we're going to do is really define what productivity means. That's coming to, I think, KV's question. KV, right? Or should I say Srinivas? What should I call?
Yeah, Srinivas.
Srinivas. So Srinivas' question. So I'm going to show the manufacturing way of looking at productivity, which is this. Right? This is the way manufacturing defines it. The first clue I can give you is obviously it's incomplete. So what is missing in this definition is something when you apply it to your own workplace. So this really says output to input. Exactly. See, Apriti, sorry.
At the efficiency.
Yeah, this is just efficiency. Exactly. So what is missing?
In the time that has been done.
Okay, the time is missing. The speed. Yeah, yeah. Which comes to efficiency, because if you produce if you're more efficient, you do it in the time. If you're less efficient, but fair. Yeah. Anyone else? Datta,
I think there is a time element missing. Normally, output to input is efficiency, and I think per time element, what is the throughput rate? That is called productivity. Am I right?
There's no right or wrong answer, so I may not, but that's fine. Yeah, yeah. Again, I'm going to share Equist, but that's a great point. I think time element. I think there's a deadline. You're essentially saying there's a deadline in which you have to deliver. Is that correct? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone else? I think that's a great point. Quality, yes. Rajkumar mentioned that. That is definitely missing. Anything else? Oh, yeah. Go ahead. Okay, I'm gonna just quickly reveal it. Okay, so productivity is really a multiplier, and can be for any kind of productivity. I've spoken about personal productivity, but really is for anything. It's a multiplier of what was selected, right? The priorities. You may be efficient, but in the wrong activity. So the first thing is, have you chosen the right activity? And I think you all spoke about the prioritization, right? Quality was a point that was brought up, right? And Chad Rajkumar brought that up. How much time it takes, which is the efficiency aspect, which is what you all are saying. Is it being done in the time? And the thing that gets missed out the most is how do you feel after, which is the mindset. Are you feeling more positive? Because if you can do all this and if you don't feel positive, what is really the point, right? But that also that sometimes that feeling gives you a big clue. At the end of the day, you're not left with an Excel sheet where you've mapped your productivity. You're left with the feeling, right? That feeling tells you a lot. That feeling tells you, okay, have I been really productive? Have I not been productive? So that feeling is very critical, and that mindset is critical. So that's why now all this only increases that your likelihood that you'll achieve the desired outcome. You can't guarantee outcomes. There's no way. So you can't. You may have done the perfect pitch. You may have gone to the right client. You may have done it in the best quality. You may have done it in time. You may have felt really good about it and still not won. But at least those four are in your control. So you can do your best, to make that happen. So really, this is, Srinivas, just my definition of productivity. You can take this into, then services and manufacturing in that sense. But I hope this is helpful. I've got a message directly, which is about productivity is the outcome of efficiency and acceptance. I think that's a great point. It's also about acceptance because, and I think that's bringing a whole angle of. Sorry, go ahead. Sorry, somebody want to speak? Okay. Sorry, I thought I heard a voice.
Yeah, Tejas.
Yeah, Ankit.
Hi, this is Ankit Porwal.
Hi.
I shared you that message, and I think that productivity is overall outcome that directly relates to the efficiency as well as the that's outcome and efficiency, which is totally related to the productivity part. Acceptance is the one thing that actually is required when you want to be more productive. That's what I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you say acceptance, you mean in the sense of acceptance from external people, when you say acceptance?
Acceptance means it can be internal as well as external, both the things, because when you work on something, you need to be accepted by the people with whom you are working. You yourself should be very much clear on the thing, what you want to gain and how you want to gain.
Perfect. No, it makes sense. So, Ankit, and that's a great point. And I think what we should just do is take a couple of minutes for ourselves and just write our own definition of productivity. I think that's useful because we're getting some insights. We're getting other people with great views. We don't want to lose that. So just write down whatever comes to mind as your definition of productivity. Would love to hear, any answers also. Something that makes you feel you completed what you planned and gave satisfaction. Yeah. So Ritika, how you can use this is when you're feeling like you've not had a productive day, ask yourself, have you completed what you planned and did you feel satisfied with it? And if you have, then you have had a productive day, right? So sometimes it's just asking yourself that one question and you realize, okay, you can let yourself off the hook, right? Because often our days, unfortunately, don't feel productive for the vast majority of us, right?
Yeah.
So, the more you define it for yourself, the better, for sure. That's a great definition. Cool. We're going to move on just in the interest of time. Oh, sorry. Output rate with minimum resources on sustainable basis. Great point. Sustainable. I think that's a great point. There's data to show that, people who work 60 hours, for example, they work in an unsustainable manner, and after 6 weeks, up to 6 weeks, they have a higher productivity than somebody working 40 hours. But after 6 weeks, I'm talking about 60 hours a week. After 6 weeks of working like that, they start to go lower than the person working 40 hours significantly, because you can't keep up high levels of work for a long period. That's why you have those small periods where you get a lot of work done and you think, oh, wow, it's so amazing. I'm able to do it. Now let me do this going forward as well. And then you realize it's not happening. So you can do those short bursts, but you can't do it on a sustainable basis. I think that's a great point. Absolutely. Thank you. Cool.
Yeah, Tejas, Sachin this side. If I may add,
please.
I look at productivity is that what is the desired outcome? What is our actual outcome against the target or desired outcome, desired plan? What we have, like we plan, we need to achieve these many things, or we need to finish this thing in this much time. So if you are able to do so, then we feel it went productive and our output was productive. But in case we miss out those targets, then the feeling comes that it has been unproductive.
Yeah, so and that's a hard one, Sachin, because what you're saying is almost a definition of success to me, So if you've been
somehow
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
So somehow in my case, I feel productivity in that sense only. Otherwise, it gives me unsatisfaction that I have not been productive if I'm not able to
Yeah.
achieve what I target.
Yeah. No, it's a great point, Sachin. The only thing you have to ask yourself is, can you feel that every day? How many wins do we have? We get exactly. I mean, I maybe if I get one win a month, I'll celebrate. So the question is, how do you feel productive every day? How do you measure that productivity? That's why the outcome, for example, may take weeks to materialize, and you may not even get a positive outcome. So you can say, "Oh, I'm not been productive for this. Now what?" 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. So it's a hard
No,
question.
no,
Yeah.
no, no. I actually meant that productivity is for defined day. For example, I said
Yeah.
that today I'm going to do these many things, for example, and within this time frame.
Understood.
So I'm
Sorry.
not talking
Yeah.
about the long-term outcomes. I'm talking about the productivity in the sense that whatever targets we've defined for today or a week or so,
Yeah.
are we able to achieve that within those timelines?
Perfect.
So
Exactly. Yeah. Absolutely.
generally what happens, even if we are conducting a management review meeting,
Yeah.
so whatever targets you want to do, whatever reviews you want to do, whatever things you want to do for yourself, you are able to achieve those. Sometimes we get straight, sometimes you're not able to focus on things. Even whatever the learning targets we fix for ourselves, we are able to achieve sometimes we are not able to achieve. So
Yeah.
if you are not able to achieve that, then you feel it's unproductive.
Yeah, absolutely. That I agree with you. Sorry, I think I misunderstood. No, totally right. Totally agree, align. There's no right, but totally aligned in terms of the way you're thinking about it. So, and it comes down to a point on if priority then efficiency, right? If you choose the right things and you say you're going to do it in a certain time, you're saying I've chosen those things. I want to do it in a certain time, and if I achieve the things I've said I will achieve in that period, I would call it productive. Makes total sense. So I think the question then becomes how much a problem is productivity in organizations, right? You all have spoken about it. I think everybody on this call safely has multiple productivity challenges. And that is what the data tells us as well. 78% of Indian employees actually say that they have insufficient focus, time in a day. 76% say they lack time and energy to get work done, and 41% feel like work-life, separation, lack of work-life separation, balance is negatively impacting them. So it's a significant problem today, and it's not being solved to the extent, that it should be solved. And we'll talk about solutions as we go along. But talking about the business impact, it can make significant impact. There's somebody called Michael Mankins from Bain and Company, who's an expert in this space, and he basically spoke about the fact his research found that organizations that are for the best tend to be 40% more productive than the rest. So, and that what that leads to is also higher operating margins. And in fact, to the extent of 30 to 50% then higher than industry peers. So significant, and it makes sense if your people are working in a more productive manner, they're going to produce better outputs, which means better results as well. So it does have business value. But the question then becomes, what are the challenges? We've spoken about, okay, the fact that it has a benefit, but what really are the challenges? And they are kind of linked to what you all said, right? So when I did a survey of about 50 employees, we found that five kind of challenges that emerged. And this is from different organizations. The first is communication overload. Too many calls. You're getting a call on email, on project one, you get an email on project two, you get you're thinking about project three. So we just have too much communication overload that's happening right now, more than we've ever had in the past, right? Some of us who are my age or older will remember, life without computers and digital. So we have seen how life is without all this, things coming our way. So that it is significant challenge. The second is constant time pressures, right? I think some of you spoke about that. Everything is urgent. I need it as of yesterday, kind of thing. So it's becoming a lot of firefighting. Most of us feel like we're just fighting fires, and we're not feeling like we have the time to think, as much as we should. The third is fading boundaries. When does work life begin? Where does work end? When does personal life begin? Become a boundary, right? Become a blur. So because your phone is I know some people, get up 3 o'clock in the morning. I don't know, there'll be maybe a couple of you amongst us, get up 3 o'clock in the morning, check their emails, reply, and go back to sleep. So we're just plugged in all the time to our messages, particularly in today's day and age. You have inadequate rest and rejuvenation, right? We're spending so much time, there's Netflix binge watching, there's working late on weekends. So we're not rested anymore. We're constantly wired, a lot of us. Lack of clarity. If you ask five people in a team, what are the goals of the team, you'll get five different answers very often. In fact, I remember I'd done a workshop where I asked people, what do you do? What does your organization do? I didn't even ask what are your goals, outcomes, nothing. There was no clear response. We spent 10 minutes where people then started discussing that they need to now come up with a proper articulation of what it is that they do. So it shows. I mean, goals are बहुत दूर की बात है, in that sense. So just want to understand, out of the five challenges, which one do you all find is the most challenging for you? You can just put it in chat and even talk about it. So communication overload has become a major challenge, and so is lack of clarity. And I think they go hand in hand, right? If you think about it, the more communication you're getting, the more threads are open. The more threads are open, the more clarity, is lost in that process.
I
So
agree.
was that Ritika?
I agree to the context what you told us, that more people are there, more communication actually complicates the things, and thus it decreases our productivity.
For sure, for sure. Absolutely. I think communication has become such that it's become very hard to manage our day. Some of us spending the most dreaded feeling is opening your email after you've done a 1 week vacation. Within an hour, you feel like, why did I go on vacation? I'm sure a lot of you may. Yeah. So I think so. We've identified problems, right? So we're all feeling a little bit. I think there's a feeling of togetherness, when you identify problems that you all face together. I remember I asked people, in a recent workshop, like how many of you have short attention spans? Out of 28 people, 26 people raised their hands. So I didn't even have to count because I just had to minus the two people who had not raised their hand. So we're all struggling with productivity more than ever. So we're kind of in the same boat in that sense. But the question becomes: so what are the areas that we should tackle? Right? We've spoken about the challenges. We said this is critical. Um, so yeah, so the next one is, so I'm going to talk about individual productivity and team productivity as two areas. And then we talk about how to kind of do something about it. Again, keep in mind, we can't go too deep. So just bear with me. So when it comes to individual productivity, I spent about 6 months putting this down. And these are the 6 themes that I came up with based on research. I spent 7 years reading about productivity and then, practicing stuff. And this is kind of what came out. And I think some of these you all covered as well. Mindset. I think the biggest thing that's ignored is mindset. How do you build a mindset? Strong mindset. Like for example, some of us may say, "Hey, I'm not a great numbers person," or "I'm not a PPT person," and then we're stuck with that mindset, right? And then there's a lovely quote which says, our thoughts become our words become our beliefs, and our beliefs become our actions. So it's something along those lines, kind of. So essentially, we start limiting ourselves very, very quickly on particular areas. So how do we build those mindsets that actually enable us? Is the first area. The second is prioritization. Like we spoke about it all the time. The average person can do has about 100 open tasks. So all of you, if you sit down today and you actually list down all your personal tasks, and your work tasks, you'll get to about 100 tasks on average that are open. Uh, on a good day, we can probably get 5 or 10 tasks done, right? You would agree with me, right? So that means every day we can't do 90 to 95 tasks. That's just the nature of life. And every day we also get 5 more tasks, right? So that means we're actually going to find that there are going to be many tasks that will never get done in our lives. That's just the reality of it. If you reach that point, that's great. But unfortunately, I don't know anybody who's completed all their tasks and has nothing to do. If you meet that person, they should be on the other side of this of this session. So I think the next so really prioritization is so critical, and the question is we get stuck with a one way of prioritizing. So what is the one way of prioritizing? Which is, अरे this ये urgent है, अब ये करना है. We've got this thing is due in the next week. I need to really get it done, right? But we forget those things which are really going to help build long-term value for us, right? We forget the things that are going to help us not only in our work life but also in our personal life. Yeah, I think Mayur, that's a great point. Eisenhower method is a great tool, which I think some of you may know is like a matrix of urgent and important. And a lot of us are working in the urgent and important bucket, which is things which are due very soon and are very critical. But we're very rarely working in the important but not urgent bucket, which is where our growth comes from. And that's where learning and reading and look strategizing, these are things that really come in that bucket, which we don't unfortunately get enough time to do. So how do you build balanced prioritization is the second thing to think about. The third is how to plan the week and day. It's the biggest hack here is you don't need you whatever way you plan is totally fine as long as you make a plan. I think the problem is most of us we make plans, those plans don't work, and then we give up planning. We say abhi nahi hone wala hai, so we just give up planning. That's the worst thing you can do, because the most you need a plan is when things are hectic, and we give up plans when things are hectic. In fact, the thing I keep hearing, अरे मेरे पास time नहीं है plan करने के लिए. I just am working. But that's when you need to plan because you have so much to do. It's a counterintuitive, right? But planning is so critical. Even if you spend 5-10 minutes planning on a day, and you spend half an hour, let's say, planning for a week, that's enough, right? Some plan is better than no plan. So just something to keep in mind. And think about it this way: would we accept any project, without a plan? We wouldn't, right? But we accept our day-to-day lives without proper plans, and that's why really bringing that planning adherence is important. Task management is another part. Like I said, we have about 100 open tasks. How do you manage those tasks? Though that's an art in itself. So how do you really manage that? That's something to think about. One thing I can tell you about task management is I try to have a task list that's complete. Uh, as much as you can put on a list and review it every week, the more beneficial it is, right? Like for example, I'm sure if I ask you all, have you all done your finances? Some of you will say no. Have you been able to revise your strategy in the last 2-3 years? There'll be some of you who will say no, right? There are something which need to be updated, which need to be done, which have been not been done. What is that? You can only look at that when you have a full list. So figure out a way to just create a complete list. And there's a great book called Getting Things Done, which is like a real starting point in productivity. The next is attention, which is how do you stay focused today? Attention is really the next competitive advantage, right? Because in a world where we are having startups fighting for attention, right? Instagram wants you to be as inattentive as distracted as possible. That means they get more views, right? So where attention is a big challenge right now. And triggers, right? Triggers are, we have meetings and emails coming our way. How do we find enough time for strategic thinking, right? So how do we deal with those triggers and still find space for ourselves? These are the 6 areas. Yeah. So do these resonate? Do they make sense? And any one, again, let me know which one is the most, it resonates most with you in terms of something you feel you really need to pick up for yourself, right? So think about yourself in that sense. Anything that comes to mind out of these 6 areas. And this is the interesting part about productivity, right? There's so far we're still waiting for somebody to agree with, for alignment on one particular theme. But productivity, the reason there are so many topics is because for each person, they'll have a different challenge in productivity. So that's why these areas are so many, because you really need to identify, and hopefully if one takeaway you can get from this slide is think about the area you really need to focus on next, and just pick one area, and we'll pick one area in team productivity which will come next, and really solve for that in the next few weeks. You will find yourself in a far better position in that sense. Cool. Anybody want to share a little bit about anything that you can even share? If there are something you've done which have helped you in this area, you can share challenges. Totally open.
I think I have struggled a lot with my short attention span because we have to create sometimes multiple pitches for shows for different kind of content videos that we do for our production house. But in last 2 3 years, since the time I've started properly, like dividing my time, that morning till 10 o'clock, I will not even look at my phone. I will not even look at my mails, nothing. This is going to be me time from 6 a.m. till 10, where I'm going to probably read newspaper and probably do my exercise and just cook once in a while. So I do that. So there was a time when there was a habit to just keep checking the phone all the time, but now it has over a period of 2 years, I think, reduced substantially. Unless there is a fire, then only I have to. There is a running show or something. Otherwise, I am able to manage that. And then I know that this is my time for work. And then I get into a work mode. But yeah, still, I deal with that attention span problem quite a lot.
Yeah, and in fact, Preeti, interestingly, when you deal with a challenge to the extent you are, is when you do something about it. I'm sure there are other folks who also get up in the morning and like check their phone and like I do. I by the way, I'm fully guilty of checking my phone when I get up. So I do. I don't pretend to be like this perfectly productive person. But I've also had to build systems and controls. Have you tried the Pomodoro technique?
No.
Okay, just Google it. This Pomodoro technique. It's a very great. It's a very good tool
Okay.
for technique for focus. So
Okay.
the way it works is you do 25 minutes of focused work.
Huh.
You take a 5 minute. Oh, Mayur is done. Mayur, do you want to share?
Uh, what I do is first I list down all the tasks in a task list. Then I do Eisenhower of P1, P2 of important, urgent, important but not urgent, not urgent but not important, and not important, not urgent. Then after that, every Sunday, I plan in a calendar about the important, urgent tasks, and I do a time boxing. And at the time of time boxing, I use this Pomodoro technique.
Perfect. So I think there were a lot of productivity terms that Mayur has mentioned. I think you have an internal productivity Spock if you need one. So in fact, I think the point about time blocking. There's time blocking, time boxing, time batching, which are all different things. But essentially, it's a conscious decision to allocate your time across the week versus just saying, okay, I get into the weekend and just it happens the way it happens. And I think it's a great way to do things, to say, okay, I have these three things to, for example, and I tell people, just think about three things you need to do in the week, because otherwise it gets overwhelming. If you say three things I need to get done in the week, you put that in your calendar so that you don't forget it. And these are the three most critical things. You put that in your calendar so that you don't forget it. You'll find yourself making far more progress in the week. And then and those three critical things can be, like I think to Mayur said, the Eisenhower matrix, like, urgent and important. And you can even pick, I usually tell people, in fact, Mayur, to pick one, which is out of the three, which is important but not urgent. Like for example, let's say you have a boss, you've been wanting to, or a client, you've been wanting to show them some new ideas, you've been wanting to inject some new, energy into it. You spend an hour on that important but not urgent task, because otherwise we get lost in only urgent and important in that sense. No, great, Mayur, thank you. But yeah, Pomodoro is a great tool, Preeti, to use for, focus, techniques in that sense. Cool. Okay. Yeah. So I'm gonna wind up not being able to cover all the content because I prefer, like we're interactive, because otherwise it becomes for you guys, also a little bit like one is too many kind of situation. So I hope that's that's a better format. So let me know if you just want to keep going. Okay, cool. So you have then team productivity, right? So in team productivity, again, 6 themes, and I just in the last quarter, I finally closed in on these 6 themes, which are direction. What are the team's purposes, goals, and effectively monitoring and tracking those goals. I think that's in the poll, multiple of you said direction is a big challenge that you're facing. Delegation. How many, like some of you may have become managers or directors, recently. So you may have had to make that transition from individual contribution to, to manage more managerial roles. And that a lot of us struggle in that because we try to be when we become managers, we think we still think we are able to do as much as individual contributors below us, right? But it doesn't work that way, unfortunately. The reason we don't delegate, in fact, is because we are very good individual contributors. So we know we can do the work better because we actually can do the work better, right? Because the person has just taken up the role and you've been doing it for a few years, right? But the problem is, if you don't let go, you can't go into your next role. So you will be continuing to play a role which is actually lower than the role you are at, right? So when you think about that, you really realize, okay, I need to delegate, right? Because otherwise, 3 years later, I'm actually still not doing the role that I was, hired, what I am at right now. So delegation is so critical, and delegating as per the situation. There's something called situational leadership. I don't know if any of you have heard of it. Anyone here has heard of situation? Okay, so basically, it's you don't have a fixed rule that I'll delegate everything or I won't delegate everything. It depends on the situation. So if the situation requires if today the deadline is in the next 3 hours, you can't say come back to me and like I'll wait for you. You need to be in on it, right? But if it's about a month away, you can say, hey, take a first stab, come up with the first version, and let's review it next week, right? So you can, depending on the time, depending on the urgency, you can delegate differently. In some cases, you may have to delegate very, very, like do it like this. But in most cases, you should try to delegate in a way that you're empowering the person to think on their own, where you give them just what the objectives are, but you don't get into how they get to it, right? So again, it's a very deep topic, but just, something to think about. Managing up, uh, this is a place which we struggle a lot in. In fact, this is an area where I found people are resonating most with when I do workshops, is we don't know how to manage our bosses, we love to complain about our bosses. This guy, we we're having coffee and then we're saying, my boss, fir say, he did this, he did that. But the reality is at some point, whether you like it or not, you have that boss, And Murphy's law states that the more your boss is challenging, the longer you'll have that boss, right? So you can't really do anything except to adjust to the boss you have. So the first thing to do is really understanding your boss. Map them out. What are they learning? What is their style? Do they like you to speak in brief? Do they like longer explanations? Do they want transcripts? Do they just want the summary? Do they want written form? Do they want a verbal conversation? So understanding your boss is very critical, because without that, you find that's your real success in the organization as well, right? So managing up is a very critical area. High performance culture is the next area, which is, a lot of us, we are on this side of either process or being agile, right? It's almost like that you can't have both, right? There's some people who are like, "Arey, don't bring process to me, it slows us down." On the other side is like, we need process, we can't function without it, right? I think there's a healthy balance between the two, like most processes, you need to have a process, but the process should keep changing. It's like an operating system. Your operating system doesn't remain the same for the rest of its life. It keeps updating every week, every month. It's the same thing with the processes as well. So, like, how do you build a set of systems within teams in a way that's high performance but flexible and yet systematic, right? Meetings, this is a very important point. How much time do you all spend in meetings? Maybe just put it on chat. I just curious, on a daily basis, roughly, how many hours do you spend in meetings?
4 to 5 hours.
4 to 5 hours. Okay. Yeah. 8 hours. My God. I feel empathy for you, Varun. 6 to 7 hours as you have to work with remote teams. Yeah. Varun, would love to hear more from you, because I think it's going to be hard to beat.
So I don't have a choice actually. The reason why I have to do that is because I manage. I'm a co-founder in my business, so I have to manage a lot of different stakeholders and primarily delegate a lot of work. So I usually finish most of my work by 10 in the morning, and then after 8 in the night. So from 10 to 8, I literally have a 15-minute lunch break, right? The only respite in the day is when a friend calls me up or something, then I can literally step out for personal time. And that's really it. So I found, but and then like try to avoid working on Sundays. But really on spending times in meetings, I usually lose my temper pretty often. And that is really a tough thing, that's where because you can't, like, it's physically impossible to do that, sit so many hours in meetings, and especially when you many a time are not just listening in, you're actually giving and taking and making decisions, and it gets too tough. So yeah, I try to eat less, keep energy levels up, done a lot of health and wellness things, but it's really tough, to be honest with you. Monday to Friday is very tough.
No, absolutely, Varun. And, totally feel for you because, this is I wouldn't say 8 hours, but I think somebody said 6 to 7 hours. I was in that bracket myself. Ritika, I think I mentioned. What would you like it to be? If you were to reduce it, what do you think the ideal number of hours?
Uh, I really don't know, but
Yeah.
I think we have a half day work on Saturday, and I feel many a time on Saturday on half day we are able to get the same amount of work done that we are able to get on a full day Monday, and obviously because there's less incoming traffic on Saturday, and I feel that if that is keeping that queue, 5 hours is a good metric to go with.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Varun, this is a place you're running the organization, right? This is your own
Yeah,
organization.
so I take care of product and sales, and then there are other founders who take care of tech and all. But the thing is that tech has very streamlined, but when in sales, it's not that streamlined. It's a lot of moving around, and we have and the issue is because of the working hours. We have a business in two geographies. That is a bit of a challenge. Where yeah.
Yeah. No, so Varun, I think that the good part of where you're at is you have the power to do it if you choose to. I think what I'm hearing from you is that it's gotten a situation where it's difficult to do it. So you choose to continue in that because you have to. If I read it correctly. And the question becomes, try an experiment. Because you can always reverse an experiment. Because you can always go back. Try to see if you can reduce your meetings by, let's say, 10% or 20%, right? You don't have to go from 8 hours to 3 hours or 4 hours. But because the way to do that is to find out what is your real core activity that you want to spend time on. And coming back to, I think, Mayur's point, right? Like if you take, okay, these are the most critical in my urgent, important bucket. These are things which are really going to move the needle. This is what I do on Saturday that really move the needle. And if I do that more on Monday to Friday, I'm actually going to get far greater work done. If you think about that, and you slowly make that change, you may find, there's a lot of ability to, there's a lot of movement out to make things happen. And you put more, how many hours are spent in internal meetings? Usually that's a lot of the challenge. I don't know if you're having that challenge or is it more external meetings?
So that's the thing, right? So I would love to spend more time on external meetings.
Yeah.
Which I cannot. And to second your point, Tejas, when I'm out in the field, when I'm traveling, I'm out in the field. When I'm like not at my laptop, I feel very good because I don't need to talk to anybody and I can talk only to people I like to talk to. So yeah, so that's actually very good. So sometimes I just don't, I force myself to go meet clients even if I don't need to meet them. It allows me to, take a breather from office activities.
No, in fact, Varun is a great point. One of the people I spoke to, they actually stopped coming to office. They're the founder. Once a week, not all the time. Where they said they come to office, somebody keeps knocking. They get they say, sir, ye hai, wo hai, do you mind, whatever. So they actually started working in coffee shops. So it's an irony that they are running your own organization, but they were far more productive. So maybe something to try because the distance does help, and you don't have to go into a cocoon, but maybe that 4 hours, 8 hours in the week that can be spent. Just think about it, and I'd love to hear if you see, because you already have the clues.
Oh,
and you already have the experience of having been more productive. So you know what it feels like. So and you can probably resonate with me in the sense of if you do it, you'll probably be way better off. Would I be correct in saying that?
Yeah, actually, I'm literally telling you when I'm working in the car, when I'm traveling to client locations and I'm in the car, I'm actually much more happier because I can only call people who I want to, and those who are calling me think 100 times whether should I disturb him or not right now. And one month we were in Ahmedabad together, our entire cohort, and almost all of us, and Ankit and I can second that. We actually saw increase in sales revenue because he's also in sales background when we were not there. So I felt I'm a roadblock in my company's efforts to drive higher sales.
Let's just call it a coincidence. No,
Yeah.
so absolutely, so Varun, like again, like these are very human issues, also, sometimes it's like you said, I think getting out of the office more, going for meetings more, finding a little more space, and I'll talk about some ways you can create deep work kind of, a deep work office, is what I call it. I'll come to that, but I think it's a great, thank you for like sort of sharing openly. I think hopefully other people have also gained from it.
Hmm. Thanks for the opportunity.
Cool. So I think so now we've spoken about team and personal productivity. So steps that you can take within your organization is what I'm going to cover next. So here so first thing I say is run a survey. It may sound very like like not very sort of out of the box, but most people when I ask them, they don't have a clue about what the productivity challenges are. We've looked at surveys in terms of like thanks so much, Varun. Like we looked at like other challenges, other HR issues. Do you feel appreciated, all those kind of things, but we don't ask about productivity often enough. So run a survey. In fact, recently I just there was a company that's doing an annual survey. I just inserted 3 questions on productivity into that survey, so they actually found out productivity challenges. I can even share a format if that helps, in terms of questions that can be useful. Maybe I can do it offline actually. The one of the people, in fact, I spoke to in the HR function actually told me that we don't have any productivity challenges. And then 21 responses showed every single person had a productivity challenge. So sometimes it can be a big blind spot, and I don't blame the person. For sure, I'll share it afterwards. Isolate, what are the root causes? A lot of people try to give you the problem and the solution together. They say, for example, we have too many meetings, so do this, do that, or whatever. But sometimes too many meetings is a symptom and not a cause. The symptom may be that there's too much work. So the root cause maybe there's too much work. Because we're not prioritizing enough. We're not saying no to enough things. It may not be because the automatic thing is I have too much. We need more people. I mean, how many times do you hear that from your employees, right? Like I have, there's too much work. We need more people. But usually that's not something, that's not a quick fix. You don't hire people, or bring people on overnight. So anyway, it's not a great solution. So prioritization is sometimes the clue. Things to be done. So finding the root cause of the challenge is the second most critical thing. The third step is identifying priority areas of highest criticality, right? So ask yourself, and how do you prioritize, right? I think it goes back to what you said. What are the urgent, important things? But also, what are the simplest way to think about it is I have a goal. What are the challenges, if I resolve them, are going to get me closest, to my goal? So, for example, let's say, I think there was, I think we just spoke about sales meeting, right? So when you look at, like, for example, what Varun brought up in terms of, sales, if I'm a salesperson, I want a salesperson out on the field doing sales. If they're spending 6-7 hours in internal meetings, then that's not an effective use of their time, right? So when you prioritize, you look at, okay, the highest criticality role for this person is sales, so I need them to do sales, right? So when you think of that, it gives you completely different aha, right? And then you say, why am I in 5 hours of internal meetings? Why isn't somebody else not taking this role? Because otherwise, at the end of the year, I'm not going to be asked how many internal meetings did you do, right? And how many people have you helped? Unfortunately, if the world worked like that, it would be better, actually, but the reality is, if you're a salesperson or you're in any role, I'm taking sales as an example, you'll be asked that specific question which is relevant to your role. So if you're not spending time on your role, yeah, it's good, it's challenging, right? And the fourth is, so then comes the solution, right? By step 3, the solution becomes obvious, right? So it's really the first 3 that you need to really focus on in some sense, right? I'm going to cover a few high impact solutions which may help at an individual and team level. These are only a few. So, that's a caveat again. And again, this exhaustive. So yeah, it's not exhaustive, sorry. So the first is in individual productivity, and I'll cover team productivity. These are what I've seen have work, in different organizations. So maybe, it'll be helpful for you to think about. One is creating a deep work focused office. A lot of people are now realizing open offices are not the best model, and we need to go back to those cubicle offices, right? I missed those days where you were blocked off and you could work, right? Because that people could still come over to your desk and speak to you, but at the same time you had that sort of that peace, right? Today, what happens is someone comes to and you see a person come to the desk, have talking to somebody else, you get distracted and you start talking to them before realizing it. So how do you build a deep work focus office, right? The first thing is managing your calendar, right? A lot of organizations are doing this where they're building deep work focus slots in their day. And the rule is you can't block that for meetings. So try to build that 1 hour, 2 hours of deep work focus slots in the day is going to really help you. Second is dedicated areas in the office for focus work. So there is a whole thought of creating specific cubicles where people are in deep work mode. That is a great compromise between an open office and a closed office, in the sense that when you need to focus, you get up from your desk and you go to the deep work area and you work there. And that is, everybody knows that if you're sitting in that area, that's because you're doing deep work. So there's no need to communicate, no need to tell anybody that you're in deep work, right? So that's the second, idea. The third is having like a deep work Mondays, right? Or a deep work day where you dedicate specifically to, getting focused work done. It can be a deep work day, it can be a slot in the in the day. It doesn't matter. But the point is some dedicated amount of time. This is slightly harder to implement, but it's something you can do. Skill training for focus. If there are people in your team that who are great at focus, right? Get them to speak to people. It's a skill at the end. Like for example, and how do you build that skill? You do things to do it. Like Preeti mentioned, like for example, she had a short attention span, and she's done things to counter that. It doesn't mean the attention span may have gone away, but the point is she knows that this problem is there and she's able to adjust to it in that sense. So the skill training is very critical because it is a skill that you're building at the end of the day. And then deep work tracking. I think this is a big thing, which if you are able to track how much time you're spending in deep work, you'll be amazed at how little time you're spending. The first time I tracked, I realized I was not spending as even close to the amount of time I thought in real deep work. I was spending so much time in meetings and communication and stuff like that that I really wasn't getting much deep work done. So these are like 5 practices, which you can implement, which are, to help deep work, build a more deep work focus office. Please feel free to ask questions at any point. I'm going to continue. Becoming highly priority focused. Again, going to what Mayur mentioned, right? So how do you become more priority focused? Build a list of weekly priorities, map to quarterly goals. How many of you have quarterly goals? Not annual goals, but quarterly. How many of you map that to quarterly goals? Yeah. Okay. Srinivas, Ankit. Yeah. So can you just talk about how that's beneficial and just would love
Actually, it helps us in breaking up into the target, the yearly target, what we have to achieve. When we break down into the small goals, it helps us in distributing and delegating and getting the work done.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, somebody else wanted to speak also?
Yeah, it's Srinivas mentioned it very correctly that it's something breaking an overall goal into parts and reviewing it back. Like if you are not able to achieve that, then how many efforts you have to put, or you have to make corrections to your goals, like review of the goals, like that. It is like Tejas.
No, absolutely, Ankit. So I think it allows you to be flexible also and be able to, but still time bound and a little less daunting than looking at your entire goal for the year. I think exactly. There is a very magical number of a quarter. I don't know if from the research I've got, from essentially the 1 month is too short to set a goal, right? But 1 year is too long. So quarter has a
Correct.
nice in between. So where you're able to take something and still be agile, but at the same time still be focused on a set of goals, and you're able to account for, like, for example, Q4 में ज़्यादा sales होगा sometimes, Q4 Q1 में कम होगा, those kind of things. you can account for the changes in those quarters as well. So I think if you're not setting quarterly goals, it's a very, very powerful thing to be setting. And not only in sales, even for internal initiatives, even for, people related things, everything, having that quarterly goal can be very, very powerful. So highly recommend, putting that in. But no, thanks, Ankit and Srinivas. When we look at, like I said, like a salesperson, what are the high priority tasks, right? What is it if it's not only sales, right? Like if you look at like HR function, right? Like what is the highest priority task of the HR function? Very, very critical, right? The first is making sure that they run, whatever the processes that are being, like HR processes that exist, running them effectively, right? And then building those connects with people is also highly critical in that sense. So whatever, depending, because you have different HR roles doing different, different kind of tasks, but mapping out what is the highest priority task is very critical. And then speaking about that can be really powerful, right? And then when people tell you, sorry, Mayur, go ahead.
Yeah, what is the difference between deep work and highest priority task?
So deep work, it's a great point. So for me, deep work is more about execution, about getting the work done. And to me, priority is about choosing what you need to get done. So that's how I'm seeing the two in that sense, but they're very related.
So deep work is about executing.
Executing, yeah.
Does it include the meeting or does it include individual deep work?
So here I'm talking about individual deep work, not meetings. So I'm saying, okay, today, for example, you're working on a presentation. So I'll just take an example. The prioritization is saying this presentation is critical. I get this done in the week. Deep work is saying I take out 5 hours in the week to make sure this presentation is done well. Together, if I put together, I'll be able to do a successful one.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Yeah. So then the next part is, tracking, time spent. If you ask people, like just for 1 week track how much time you're spending on your highest priority task, you'll be amazed. Again, we're spending very little time on our highest priority task very often because we get lost in internal meetings and we love firefighting, very often, right? We love that feeling of importance. Somebody comes to us, you say, then this thing, and then we save the day, and then like everything feels great again, right? But unfortunately, the most good work is very boring. If it's too interesting, that's also a so then, and then last part is, there'll be exception handling, right? There may be things you can't always be stuck to your priorities. There'll be things that come in the week that may have to take, like which may be non-priority in that sense, but you still have to take them up. So how do you balance that is very critical as well. So this is the second part really about how do you build, more priority in the way you work. Enabling more positive mindsets, there are three things that people really care about when it comes to, mindsets at work. At least it's connect, contribution, and recognition, right? So having a connect with each other is the first thing, right? Being able to feel like they're contributing, right? That they are being heard, that they are being part of a larger vision, a larger purpose. And the third, which is being recognized for that is also critical, right? So these three are really, what you can do to build a pretty solid mindset, right? Like, so, so the first is how do you build informal, on the connect part, how do you build informal bonds, activities, particularly in the age of remote working, again, like at least, if my age and, I'm sure a lot of you are, experienced or more, so much gets done because of informal bonds, but we're losing that big time now, so how do we build those informal bonds? Allowing people to share anonymous feedback ideas is very powerful, right? Ideas particularly, right? Feedback is, also important, but ideas, like just somebody has a big idea they want to share. You can even have an internal ideation competition, right? We are not getting, there's so many great ideas that the youth have right now, people coming to work for that they come in and they just, but they don't have a forum to share it. And if they do, it's a quick thing and then it's either accepted or dismissed very quickly, right? But a competition gives you the time to build out that idea, to have panels, to have those rounds so that you can actually get those ideas and people, it's your own people giving you great ideas. What else you don't have to hire someone. The fourth is company awards. I won't talk too much about that. But what is interesting is recognition beyond awards. People love, this whole thing about blog posts. You'll see LinkedIn updates about a person's journey, in a company. It adds a lot of value. It makes a person feel very recognized. Some people you hear about humble backgrounds, for example, how they've been able to grow and really go from a very junior position to being a very senior position in the organization. All those are very, very powerful stories which get lost, within the company. But, so talking about it on LinkedIn, putting an internal article or an internal blog can be really powerful and very, very useful, to build that mindset as well. So these are some areas, in terms of individual. I'll just one more slide on team productivity. Uh, some solutions here. Optimizing meetings, very, very critical. So what can you do about that? Acceptance comes in exactly, Ankit, absolutely. So optimizing meetings. How many of us have a meeting policy document in our company? How many of us have financial policy documents in our company? We're spending 6 hours in a day in meetings, and there is no policy document that talks about how to spend that time in meetings. Isn't that odd? You mean,
Yes.
right? You're spending 75% of that person's salary has gone into a meeting if you take an 8-hour working day, because unfortunately most of us are working more than 8 hours. But
But I think,
75%,
but
yeah,
what I think, Tejas, is
yeah,
that
yeah,
when you are at a leadership position, all these things are very much necessary because there's a difference between the hierarchy and a flow of work allocation as well. All these meetings are related to the plannings and the allocation of the task and the reviewing the task is accomplished or not, and if anything else is to be done in that manner. So I think
absolutely, absolutely.
meetings. Hmm.
I'm not saying you need to reduce meetings just for the sake of it. I'm saying meetings need to be better run. Just as you're very careful about how money is spent in the organization, expenses are made. You have to be as careful about how time is spent in the organization. That's why time policies is something that needs to be created. In fact, I'm trying to come up with an idea towards that. But a meeting, at least a meeting policy document, which says how do you run a meeting, it can be extremely critical. Because Ankit, like for example, if you're spending 6 hours and your role requires it, no problem. But if you're spending 6 hours and you're getting frustrated because the other person is coming in and is totally unprepared, that's a problem.
No,
You
no.
agree?
They
Yeah.
just like when you mentioned that
Yeah.
how to optimize the meetings or how to plan the meetings.
Yeah.
Like I am from the healthcare, I comes from the hospital industry. In
Yeah.
the morning, every day we have a 10 minutes standing meeting so that to manage all the operational issues which has happened a day before. Then we plan the first half of the day for the external meetings with the company people and all these, and the second half is being scheduled for the internal meetings. But the time has been completely given for the things which are going to happen externally or internally, like that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, totally makes sense, Ankit. But do you find any challenges in these meetings? Do you feel they're running well? Do you feel?
No, no. In fact, because
Yeah.
of these morning meetings
Yeah.
things, we are able to solve most of the patients' likely things which are in our hand, and we can resolve those issues. But there are some things which requires plannings. So if that comes into the morning meeting, we take them for the second half and we discuss those things and plan accordingly for the future plannings. Like that, it happens.
Yeah. So, Ankit, without realizing it, maybe, or maybe you do realize it, is that you already created a policy. You may not have written it, which is you've got a systematic way of running those meetings, right? You have a process.
Exactly.
Yeah. So totally makes sense. But unfortunately, a lot of people don't. They don't have a policy or a way of thinking where they think really about how to run a meeting. In fact, if you document it, maybe it'll be useful for other people to see your thinking behind it as well. But no, it absolutely makes sense, what you mentioned. So you already have it in place. So may not be as much of a challenge for you, for sure. No, thanks, Ankit. Very helpful. So the other thing is, like there's something called a 40-20-40 rule, which is uh, spending 40% before a meeting in preparation, 20% in the meeting, and then 40% in follow-up. And this is for large meetings. You can't do this for every meeting,
Yes.
but it really shows the rigor, in the meeting. Is that a lot of times people set up a meeting and they start thinking about the agenda in the meeting. They have a broad idea, and that's what you want to change. You want to have people sending agendas, particularly if there are like one of the things I say is if there are forum of people in the meeting, you should have an agenda, a very good, clear agenda. Otherwise, you should not have the meeting. You should allow people to decline because there is no agenda, right? So I think those are very critical because four people coming together is 4x, the cost, in straight away, right? So 40-20-40 can be a great rule to think about. Um, you can have meeting free slots in a day, like, maybe even 1 hour, 2 hours where you don't block. It can be based on your organization. Some organization may have more flexibility, some may have less. That's totally fine. But thinking about meeting deliberately is the main point. No, thanks, Sanjay. You good night, and you have a good weekend as well. Enhancing
Thank you,
collaboration
Tejas.
is the second.
Have a good night.
Thank you so much, Sanjay. Enhancing collaboration is the second point, which is there's something called brain writing. Any of you heard about it? It's a very interesting concept, which is before you get into a meeting, you get people to write their ideas down before. Because if you ask people to share ideas in the meeting, they start echoing the one voice that is, that's the most powerful, right? What this does apparently, and research shows that this improves um, ideas and by more than 40%. Original ideas are brought in because you've just asked people to do the writing before and then come in versus getting them to actually do that. So getting people to write down their ideas before they share, before everyone starts sharing, is very critical so that you get original ideas more. So brain writing is a great practice to do that. The second thing which is harder to do is setting joint targets for sales or delivery across teams. We're trying to enhance collaboration can be challenging without a common goal. Because often we don't collaborate because we don't have a reason to collaborate, right? So that comes to the third part, which is focus on meaningful collaboration. Instead of lot of times we say we need to collaborate, but build really why should two teams come together? That should be very clear, and there should be conversations about what is the value in two of us coming together. It shouldn't be taken for granted that by coming together we'll collaborate, we will add value. Sometimes it's the opposite, right? And this last part is create bridge roles. Try to have people in the team who understand both the teams. Because they can be a great bridge. That's why often you find CEOs helping collaboration, because CEOs tend to understand both the teams. So they come and they collaborate, they help build a collaboration. But you need people in the team who can help, who understand both the team, right? So creating those bridge roles is very critical. Somebody who's in the team but who's also understanding the other context and the other team and the way they work can be really useful. And the last is driving direction. Um, Try to align on first principles first, right? Sometimes it's good to come back and say, why does the organization exist? What are we trying to do? Why have we set up these business lines? A lot of people actually don't have that clarity. You'll be surprised by the time you go down to the most junior folks in your organization, how little clarity they have on the first principles. So building that clarity is critical. Clearly defining goals, defining a no criteria. What is the kind of work we're going to say no to? Sometimes we find a client, you burnt your finger. Try to avoid that mistake again. So what are the no criteria is very critical in such a situation. Balancing process versus flexibility we spoke about, and the last is focus on the what and rather than the how. Let the teams come up with the how, but focus on the what, right? And build clarity on what is it that the team needs to do, what are the purpose, what are the goals, and give the space to the team really to then take that direction and start executing, right? That's really on driving direction. So yeah, those are the points that I want to cover. So yeah, that was pretty much what I had. Sorry, I got a bit of a bad throat.
Thank you so much, Tejas. It was quite an interesting and very, very insightful session. I mean, like, honestly speaking, I was supposed to be a timekeeper, but I decided to not keep the time because it was quite interactive. So anyway, but does anyone have any question?
I believe you have a few minutes.
Yeah, I have. Tejas, do you conduct workshops to the clients, whoever approach you?
Yeah, I do conduct workshops. I do corporate workshops on the topics we mentioned. So yeah.
Okay. How do we
I can
reach?
share details. Yeah, I can share details with Preeti and the team, and maybe you could forward it to the folks for sure. Yeah.
Because it was a very interesting session. We also don't want to continue.
Yeah. I mean, like everybody was so interactive. I mean, like I also thought, let's not interrupt it because it would have just broken the flow. And I think it was very relevant to each and every one of us individually, also not just from an organization purpose.
Yeah.
And but thank you so much, Tejas. We will any which way be keeping in touch. We also have a YouTube channel which is called Foreign Future Exchange Forum, and you could subscribe. We will have a lot more coming on the channel. So we'll keep you part of that family because we're planning to organize a lot more things in future, and we want people to keep coming and share their experiences, insights, and how we can also better ourselves. And yeah,
No,
we're on.
absolutely. Yeah.
Mayur has a question.
Yeah,
So compliments Tejas for a wonderful session. It was a lot of great learning. You have touched the topic which is of importance to all of us, the productivity, which we all are struggling to achieve.
No, thank
So
you so
again,
much.
thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Ritika. Mayur, sorry, you had it.
Thank you so much. Good night.
You.
Yeah, it was a great
Thank
session.
you.
I just want to ask one thing, and thank you,
Please.
Ankit sir, for getting me into this forum, and I'm very much thank you to Ankit sir first.
Yeah, go ahead with your
Tejas
question.
sir, that how much time a person spends in a week in deep work or high priority tasks, internal meetings and external meetings? What are the average hours a person should spend?
It's a very difficult question because it really depends on your role, So I don't want to say meetings are bad, It's not, the takeaway should not be that, come meetings karo. I find that in general, people are spending too much time on meetings, so it's an overall thing. I can't, each of you will have different experiences. So I can't speak for each person individually, but in general, I can speak. But I find, like I have a 3-4-5 rule, which I've created for myself for meetings. So I say 3 hours is ideal, like within 3 hours. 4 hours is okay, I can still manage. 5 hours is when I'm going to get very little deep work done. So I'm going to just focus then in terms of, thanks, Sachin. In terms of just survival. So I'm just going to just figure out what I can do with those remaining hours because I am very clear that, I'm going to work within certain hours and not work beyond that. And my goal is then to get much more done in a workday than I would if I worked longer hours. So because like I mentioned at the beginning, I used to work till 2 o'clock in the morning and 1 o'clock in the morning, and I stopped and I went from there to 6 p.m. And then I realized because I wanted to spend time with my son, I remember there was a week where I spent 5 days where I not interacted with my son the entire week, So I said, that's not the life I want to lead. So I just overnight, I don't say you have to do that overnight, but the lesser time I find in meetings, I found in my case, the lesser time you're spending meetings, I'm spending meetings, the more I'm able to get deep work done and the more productive, thing. So
And
that's 3-4-5 rules is what I use.
which is the best book that you have read on productivity?
That's a good question. It's like, if you like singers, it's like asking who is your favorite singer, it's a hard one. But I can tell you, there are two books which have been very influential to me. There's Deep Work by Cal Newport. Cal Newport is great. He's going to come up, I think, with a new book as well. So I highly recommend that. And there's Atomic Habits, which some of you may have already heard of by, So Atomic Habits, so, if you read it, twice, thrice, it's not enough, It's like a Bible. It should be a Bible for if you want to build good habits. So absolutely. These two books are really great.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Tejas.
Thanks so much, Preeti. Thank
you
you.
for joining.
Thanks. Thanks,
Thank you,
Ritika. Thanks, Ankit.
Tejas.
And thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much. This session
Thank
was
you.
really nice.
Thanks, Priyanka. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, folks. I really appreciate it. It's a Friday evening, so please enjoy the weekend.
Same to you. Thank you so much.
You made the weekend, Tejas.
Perfect. Thanks. I'll keep that. Thank you. Thanks so much, Ankit.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, bye everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Guys, bye.
Bye.
Thank you.